Acceleration Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, if you've just joined us in the last few seconds after the start of the program, you'll have noticed, well, I'm not L.A. My name is Dr. Mark Kahn. I'm sitting in for L.A. while he's on special assignment. You'll be hearing more about what he has found in the weeks and the months ahead. Beginning next week, he'll be back with you. But for now, just know that some of the things that he's found are remarkable. As I mentioned last week, they're paradigm shifting. These could be very significant as we search for the truth. Now, with that in mind, I do want to take a moment at the beginning of our time together this evening and make you aware of the new video in LA's series that's getting ready to hit. It's called Secrets of the Supernatural, Voices from the Other Side. Make sure to check out LA's website. That's lamarzulli.net. or his blog at lamarzulli.wordpress.com. And you'll be able to order the video there just as soon as it's available. Now, I'd like to start our time together this evening by looking at something that has suddenly taken over much of the news coverage in the last few days. It seems like it's everywhere. Everywhere you look, there are headlines, there's commentaries, there's people talking about it on the news programs, on talk radio, and that's Jeffery Epstien. Now, for those who don't know who Epstein is, he's a billionaire that's connected with some of the most influential people anywhere on the planet. He has rubbed shoulders with the Hollywood elite, high-profile legal analysts and lawyers, and some of the most recognizable names in politics around the world. Names like Alan Dershowitz, former President Bill Clinton, President Donald Trump, and Prince Andrew of Great Britain. Now, some of you might remember that Epstein was arrested and ultimately jailed 11 years ago in Florida. Well, it turns out that he received a real sweetheart deal, which really didn't punish him given the level and severity of the crimes for which he was accused. The accusations were basically for using underage girls for his own and for others' sexual gratification. About a year or so after Epstein was released, he threw a big lavish birthday party for Prince Andrew. He threw it in his 9-story townhouse in Manhattan. Now, according to the Mercury News, dinner guests at that birthday party, just to give you some idea of the circles in which Epstein runs, included Katie Couric, Chelsea Handler, George Stephanopoulos, and Woody Allen. Now remember, this is after he's been accused of sex with underage girls, and after he was released from his 13-month sentence from that sweetheart deal that he got, which we'll talk about more later. A 2015 news story from Gawker states that Epstein's address book that was taken includes names like Courtney Love, Alec Baldwin, Ted Kennedy, many others. You'd recognize them. Well, fast forward to just a few days ago, and suddenly he's in the news again. He's been arrested in New York for the same crimes, but with new and evidently, supposedly more evidence. I won't go into a lot of the details since I'm sure that you've heard all about them repeatedly over the course of the last days. But supposedly Epstein hired teen girls to give him nude massages and eventually would either convince them or force them to have sex with him. Those, as well as other things, are what he's being accused of. Well, now suddenly, people are coming out of the woodwork to deny even knowing the guy. President Trump declares that he hardly knows him and hasn't spoken to him in years, and if you've seen the interview, he declares that he's not really a fan anyway. Alan Dershowitz, who was one of Epstein's lawyers who helped him get that sweetheart deal in Florida, evidently, according to what we're told and from an interview we find with Alan Dershowitz on the Crooks and Liars website, Dershowitz received massages there at the mansion. But he's claiming that he kept his underwear on. I'm sure everyone so thankful for that information. But on the Crooks and Liars website, he also makes sure that everyone knows that his massages were all from old Russian women. President Clinton made a statement very soon after the news broke that Epstein had been rearrested. He quickly wanted to make sure that everyone knows he knows nothing about the crimes of which Epstein has been accused, and that, after all, Clinton was only on Epstein's plane 4 times total. And it turns out that might not be quite accurate according to some news reports. So, where are we? Here we have this lurid story, and we have all of these individuals who are connected in one way or another to Epstein, that they're suddenly wanting to make sure they distance themselves from him. And again, we have these accusations that involve these young underage women. This story is horrible. If he's guilty, he needs to be prosecuted, and he needs to be put in jail. If he's guilty, everyone deserves the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. But why is this old case that seems to have been prosecuted, 11 years ago or so, why is it suddenly back in the news media? Oh, I know that he was just rearrested. But has everyone suddenly developed amnesia, so we need to hear all of these details now, again, nonstop, everywhere? Why is there such saturation in the news media about this? Why now? What is the focus? And one of the things that I always tend to ask myself, whenever I find a news story that is suddenly blanketing the news coverage, whenever it seems like out of nowhere, a news story appears and there's blanket coverage, wall to wall, everyone's talking about it, it replaces everything. The question that is in my mind is, what am I being distracted from? What is it that I should be paying attention to, but now, because of this nonstop wall-to-wall coverage everywhere about this story, what am I not paying attention to that I should be? As I review this story and I think about it, well, I'm left with 2 possible conclusions. The first is that this story has been developing secretly for years and is being revealed now because there are some big names that are getting ready to be implicated in this. Now, I don't know if that's the truth or not, but that's one of the possibilities. And the reason now that it's wall-to-wall coverage is finally that it's broken. It's out in the open. And now that it's finally out in the open, everyone is wanting to make sure they cover this with the intensity that it deserves. That's a possibility. I don't know if it's the correct one or not, but I suppose it's possible. But the second possible conclusion that I have to come to when asking the question, why now, and what is this focus, and from what am I being distracted, is that there is something else that's going on that is so large that there needs to be this graphic and salacious story to distract us from the real events that are transpiring. Which one is right? And can we draw any sort of inferences just from the news media and the coverage that we've already seen? Or have they become so incompetent that it's going to be impossible for us to be able to figure this out? Well, let's examine these possibilities for a few moments and see if there's any way that we might be able to reach any sort of conclusion. Now, the first possibility, as I see it, is that this story has been developing for years. And the reason that it's saturating some of the news coverage now is because of these big names that are associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that could be. After all, President Clinton is involved with Jeffrey Epstein. He's been friends with him for, I suppose, a number of years. We know that he's certainly been on his airplane. We know that there are news reports that show that there's a financial aid given from Epstein for President Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. So is it because of the names that are involved? President Trump. There's pictures of Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump. Just been revealed that evidently Epstein was kicked out of one of President Trump's resorts for making untoward passes towards one of the younger women there. But was that the end of their relationship? It could be that one of the reasons that this story is breaking now is because of the heavy hitters. Prince Andrew. This is, by some news accounts, obviously horribly embarrassing to the crown in Great Britain. Buckingham Palace is displeased with this publicity on the possible actions of Prince Andrew. Could it be that these big names, this is the reason that all of this coverage has taken place? I think it's certainly a possibility. Let's examine that and see what we might be able to conclude. You see, it turns out that the primary mover in getting this sweetheart deal from 11 years ago for Jeffrey Epstein is a guy named Alexander Acosta. It turns out that he's the labor secretary now for President Trump. And there's a lot of people who are calling for his immediate resignation because of that deal that was negotiated with Jeffrey Epstein. At the time, Acosta was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. And he's the one that approved the deal for Epstein that enabled him to just serve 13 months and actually was released and allowed to go home and work out of his own private, obviously opulent office. But in 2008, this is whenever the deal was reached, there was no mention of trafficking in these young women. Rather, it was for soliciting prostitution from them. And evidently, the deal allowed Epstein to spend, get this, 16 hours a day outside of the prison. And so basically, he went there to sleep. Now, Alexander Acosta has continued to stand by his deal and say that if we didn't make this deal, there was no way we were going to be able to get Epstein. We did this in order to make sure that he serves time. I wonder, could it be because of the names that Epstein is associated with? Did that put any pressure on then U.S. Attorney Acosta? Because Epstein, from all accounts, in fact, there's a new article on The Hill that has a quote that says, if Acosta, when he was U.S. Attorney in Miami, had shown an ounce of sympathy for the vulnerable girls Epstein sexually exploited, they would have had a powerful voice on their side. They didn't. And that's the reason that the Miami Herald, according to the Hill's article, that the editorial board for the Miami Herald is actually calling for Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta's resignation immediately, saying that he's lost the trust of the public. And I just wonder, could it be because of all of these names that are associated with this, that he felt this intense pressure to cut some kind of a deal and keep these high-level individuals out of the spotlight, but secretly, in the background, the FBI and the other law enforcement agencies have been building this case against Epstein that they've now filed in New York. And that now, finally, after all of these years, we're going to be able to get some traction. Is that the reason that we have all of this news coverage? Is that this has been secretly going on in the past? And now, finally, we're going to be able to get some kind of real hard time done because of these horrible crimes. Is that what's going on? Senator Blumenthal has made this statement on Twitter that the deal Acosta made with Epstein was secret, outrageous, unconscionable, and immoral. Recent events have added powerful new evidence to the case for holding Acosta accountable for a sweetheart deal that betrayed young survivors and basic justice. He must resign. We find all of these calls for his resignation, and I can't help but wonder, why did he make such a deal with Epstein those years ago? As I surmise, with two possible conclusions. Could it be because of the high-level people that are implicated in Epstein's circle of quote-unquote friends that they began building this case, and it's taken them all this time? I don't know. Representative Adam Schiff on Twitter had this to say: Acosta gave Jeffrey Epstein, serial abuser and child sex trafficker, a sweetheart plea deal. Now, the full costs of this miscarriage of justice are coming to light, and Trump, quote, feels bad, end quote, for Acosta. Now, typically, I'm no fan of Adam Schiff. But whenever someone is right, they're right. And you have to wonder, what's going on with this? Is it because of these individuals who are involved? Is that why we're seeing this? Or I wonder, is it because of my second possible conclusion? That there is actually something else going on that is so large that there needs to be this graphic and salacious story to distract us from the real events that are actually transpiring. Is there something else that's taking place in the world around us that requires something so alarming, so sensational, so graphic, that is going to suck all of the other air out of the room? It's going to attract all of our attention, and it's going to keep all of the various news outlets so involved that we miss a story that could actually be bigger that's actually taking place. Well, if that's the case, then it requires us to begin to look at some of the other things that are transpiring, either some of the things that we are seeing or some of the things that we have been and that suddenly have disappeared. And that's where I get very interested. Because over the course of the last weeks, months, it seems as if there is a regular and has been growing number of news stories and commentaries and headline across all of the different news outlets about the UFO phenomenon. And suddenly that's been replaced by this graphic story that is so sensational and causes everyone to begin to wonder what's going on and who's involved and who did what and at what time did someone else know that this was going on. And so it's distracted us from the fact that the UFO story has, well, all but disappeared. For months now, there have been story after story after story, and not just, of course, in tabloids, but in major news outlets, the New York Times, On the television, we have, NBC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. We have all of the television outlets. It's been on talk radio, both late night talk radio and daytime talk radio. And we've had this investigation and the pondering about the UFO phenomenon and the possibility of disclosure coming soon. And suddenly, all of that's disappeared. Could it be that this story is the distraction so that we won't realize that suddenly the conversation on UFOs has disappeared? Could it be something else? Could there be something else that is so large that requires our distraction to try to keep the populace docile? We're going to consider that in just a moment. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Food was different 60 years ago. It was minimally processed, free of pesticides. It was nourishing and healthful for your body. Today, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy processing have depleted the nutrition of our food supply, which takes a toll on our health and energy. It's harder than ever to get the right nutrition. That's what Life Change Tea is meant to counteract. Our specially blended, powerful herbal formulas can give you more energy without caffeine. It's a mild cleanse, a mild daily detox. A good detox can help revive and bring back the energy of your youth. GetTheTea.com is the website. It'll cleanse you from the inside out with this herbal proprietary formula. Go to GetTheTea.com. There's no fillers, no GMOs. It's organic. Not available in stores. You must go to their website, GetTheTea.com. And their supplements are a great way to maintain your health. Read the testimonials on the website. Go to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
By jingoes, it's amazingly fresh and clean out here in beautiful New Zealand. G'day America, I'm Tabi, and I want to tell you about my new ultimate stain and odour remover, Jingos. My Jingos gunk gobblers will tackle stubborn organic stains and eliminate nasty stinking odours at the same time. Jingos effectively removes those little accidents like wine, coffee, dirt, blood, grass, even peat stains, and odours like fish, garlic, even skunk. Jingos is environmentally friendly, safe for use on fabrics, carpet, upholstery, and it works great as a laundry pre-soak on the worst pet or people accidents. Come on, America, what are you waiting for? Just go online and order your Jingos for $12.95 and get a 4-ounce travel pack free. Crikey, pay $19.95 and I'll double your order. That's 2 large Jingos and 2 travel packs for just $19.95.
For the thousands of wounded warriors returning from battle, Wounded Warrior Project has developed the Warriors to Work program, a career counseling service that helps wounded warriors translate their military experience to a civilian job. These extraordinary men and women bring more than just teamwork and inspiration to the workplace. They bring proven world-class job skills. And to ensure proper placement, Wounded Warrior Project works with employers to find just the right job fit. Talented, skilled, and eager to get back to work, you have the opportunity to hire a seasoned veteran. Contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home the brave.
Where will you be this September 13th through the 15th if you are a critical thinker seeking answers to questions like, what are aliens? Are they demons or visitors from other worlds? Do they have an agenda? And if so, how do we stop them from interfering in our lives? Then the place you need to be is Branson, Missouri, inside the Mansion Theater as Gen 6 Productions presents The True Legends Answering the Alien Question Conference 2019, featuring writer, explorer, and filmmaker Timothy Alberino, author, lecturer, and filmmaker L.A. Marzulli, and UFO researcher Richard M. Dolan, UFO investigator Chase Kletzky, investigative reporter George Knapp, world-renowned researcher and author Steve Quayle, and many more. Reserve your seats or order live streaming now at gen6.com. That's GENSIX.com.
Your official contact for the best alternative talk on the planet. KGRARadio.com.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. When we left, we were discussing the possibility of two different conclusions regarding the Epstein case and why it's been revived. The first, it's a possibility, in my opinion, that this has been something that's been developing secretly for years, and it's just now being revealed because of the big names that are getting ready to be associated with it, potentially implicated in it. And the second possible conclusion is that there's something else going on, that there's something so large that it needs a really serious distraction, something so graphic and so salacious that it distracts us from the events that are actually taking place. Now, I'm not sure which one of those conclusions would be accurate. I don't know. Whenever we left, we were discussing the possibility that these big names are getting ready to go down. And, there seems to be some possibility, some credence that we could give to that, such as the Attorney General, William Barr. He's not going to recuse himself from this new case against Jeffrey Epstein. Now, here's what's really interesting, because our Attorney General, William Barr, actually has some family history with Jeffrey Epstein. Article by The Hill Reporter shows that this connection goes back to 1973, when William Barr's father, Donald, he was the headmaster of Manhattan's Dalton School, hired Jeffrey Epstein as a calculus and physics teacher. Well, and as the article states, it's not particularly, interesting or unusual in and of itself, other than the fact that Epstein, at the time, had not earned any type of a college degree. He dropped out of Cooper Union. Now, the other strange thing about William Barr's dad, Donald, hiring Epstein as a calculus and physics teacher is that at the time, Epstein was just 20 years old. And while he was employed at this school, evidently he attracted the attention of a guy named Alan Greenberg. He had a son there that was under Epstein. And Alan Greenberg was the chairman of Bear Stearns. He hired Epstein, and Epstein was able to make a fabulous amount of money. And so could it be that there's this connection, and William Barr is going to continue to be involved in this to try to protect some of these high-profile individuals? And then there was a very interesting Twitter thread by a user named Partisan Girl that asked the question, why is a story coming about Epstein being Mossad? Why is this coming from the New York Times? It's a lengthy thread. I'm going to summarize it for you. You can find it if you'd like. But Partisan Girl lists several possibilities. One is that Epstein's partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, that her father was a Mossad agent. Now, it's interesting to note in the tweets that Ghislaine Maxwell, who is Epstein's partner, was front row at Chelsea Clinton's wedding and used President Trump's Mar-a-Lago to recruit underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein. That Jeffrey Epstein was friends with former Israeli President Ehud Barak. Interesting, isn't it? Now, I don't know of any of the veracity of that. That's a Twitter thread from Partisan Girl. You can find it. But it provides some interesting connections, doesn't it? And it seems like everywhere you turn, Jeffrey Epstein is connected to another one of these high-profile individuals. Christine Pelosi, in a tweet, says, "This Epstein case is horrific, and the young women deserve justice. It's quite likely that some of our faves are implicated." Did you catch that? Now, Christine Pelosi is Nancy Pelosi's daughter. But in this tweet, she says, it's quite likely, not possible, quite likely that some of our faves are implicated, but we must follow the facts and let the chips fall where they may, whether on Republicans or Democrats. I have to wholeheartedly agree with Christine Pelosi. I don't know her, but I like the fact that she's coming out and agreeing. We have to get to the bottom of this. So could it be that one of the reasons we're seeing this story suddenly spring to life and saturate our news media, could it be that it's because of the high-profile individuals that are involved? Get this, do you know who's going to be on part of the prosecution team? The daughter of ex-FBI Director James Comey. Maureen Comey is reportedly one of the prosecutors in the Jeffrey Epstein case. It seems everywhere you turn, there's somebody else suddenly associated with this. And of course, whenever we begin to wonder why this is taking place, the more big names that come out, the greater the possibility that that first connection, the first reason, the first possibility that I listed, that it's because of these high-profile individuals and they've been collecting it secretly and now it's suddenly getting ready to come out, the more likely it becomes. And if all of this wasn't bizarre enough, Raw Story is now reporting that Alan Dershowitz, who, as we noted, is somewhat connected already with Jeffrey Epstein, and at least he's had several massages at his mansion, even though he admits to having kept his underwear on, thank goodness. He's not trying to keep this case out of the press. Again, this is according to Raw Story. He's actually written to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit and has requested that the press be blocked from the sex trafficking case, which would, yet again, hide all of the details of Epstein's crimes from the public, including the people who are involved with it. Could this be the reason? Could this be one of the two possible conclusions? Could this be the right one? that this story has been developing secretly for years and is now being revealed because of the big names, and they've been building their case slowly, and we're suddenly getting ready to see some real high-profile individuals named in connection with this. Could be. But what about the second possibility? That there is something else going on that is so large that it needs some remarkable, some sensational story to distract us from the real events that are actually transpiring. Well, what could that be? Well, as I look around at the different pieces of news that are slipping out in between, of course, we have the U.S. women's soccer team having won, which is tremendous. But that's not really that big of a story to distract with this type of a high-profile case. And then I look and discover that the Fed chairman is warning of, quote, unthinkable harm if the United States debt ceiling isn't raised. It's not that we're not in debt enough, but he's warning basically of some type of financial cataclysm, this unthinkable damage if the White House and if Congress fails to allow the United States to go yet further in debt. Here's what he says, quote, "We've always paid our bills, and it simply must happen that Congress raises the debt ceiling in time to allow that to happen." And he warns that if you don't, it, quote, would be highly unpredictable. In other words, he's saying, quote, no one should assume that the Fed or any other agency can be relied upon to shield our economy from the short, medium, and long-term negative consequences of such an act. So could it be that the economy is getting ready to implode, and that in order to try to distract everyone and keep them to keep spending and keep running up their credit card debt and keep going to the mall and keep buying things and consuming and spending more than they can afford, could it be that this story is trying to distract them from the greater financial story? Don't look over at the economist behind the curtain. Just keep spending and everything's going to be fine. And oh, by the way, here's this horrible case. This is what you need to pay attention to. It's possible. But honestly, our debt problem has been around for years. It's horrible. We ought to be paying more attention to it. But we're not. I don't know that that is something that is grievous or large enough to account for this sensational of a story. And there's the big hurricane that's forming in the Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, that's significant, but it wasn't there whenever Epstein was arrested. There was the earthquake, but again, it's big, but it wasn't there whenever Epstein was arrested. So it must be something else. If the possibility is that there is something that we're trying to be distracted from, paying attention to, it's going to be something that's been developing for a while. And it's going to be something that's going to be so large that it's going to require a sensational story to distract us. What could that be? Could it be the possibility of war? And this time, war with Iran. Now that is a troubling story. As we mentioned just before the break, suddenly we're not seeing all of the headlines for UFOs that seems to have been a regular part of headlines and news commentaries and news programs, both in print and on television and on the internet and in talk radio, both daytime and late night. We're not seeing much of that anymore. And so it's possible that it's a distraction from the absence of the UFO stories. But I'm wondering if the distraction isn't more in line with the possibility of war with Iran. Wall Street Journal reports that the Trump administration has not yet briefed Congress on new rules for cyber attacks. And the subtitle for the article in the Wall Street Journal is that some lawmakers are concerned that lack of oversight of the military's increasing use of cyber weapons. It turns out that the Trump administration said that they had disabled some of Iran's defensive and offensive capabilities just through the use of cyber weapons. Could it be that there is actually a war that's going on? It's just a new kind of war. It's not a war being fought with tanks and troops on the ground and ships and planes and submarines, but instead it's being fought in cyberspace. And the Trump administration is not allowing members of Congress to understand these new rules that have been developed. Now, we all know about the agreement that former President Obama and his administration negotiated with Iran. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, whether you agree with the billions of dollars that were returned or you think it was the wrong thing to do, whether you agree with President Trump pulling out of that agreement or not, the fact remains is that Iran is a major player on the world stage. And it's made no secret that it's continuing to develop nuclear materials. That it is certainly rattling its saber in the Gulf, in the Straits of Hormuz. And they've said that they're working on a bomb. And now we have the Trump administration engaged in some type of cyber warfare that they're not willing to allow Congress to know anything about. And Israel has said very plainly, very clearly, that they're not going to allow Iran to have the use of a nuclear weapon. Here's what they said. As reported by Reuters, Benjamin Netanyahu said, quote, "This morning on my way here," this is from an article in May, "I heard that Iran intends to pursue its nuclear program. We will not allow Iran to achieve nuclear weaponry. We will continue to fight those who would kill us." Now, whatever your viewpoint on Israel and Iran and the Middle East is, you have to admit those are frightening words. Simply stating that we are not going to allow this to occur. That we will stop this. We will prevent this from happening. So could it be that a war with Iran is the thing that is taking place, that it's ramping up and getting ready to occur? And that's the distraction, the thing that we are being distracted from? Well, it could be. Because another potential thing that I notice is that there has never been a United States presidential election where the sitting president, whenever there is impending war, has ever been voted out of office. Anytime there is an impending war, the president who is currently in office and is eligible for re-election is always re-elected. It's funny how it seems that war always becomes a likelihood, at least a possibility, whenever the presidential election is on the horizon. And so could it be that this is the story that the Jeffrey Epstien thing is trying to distract us from? that this is what's occurring in the background. Stay distracted, stay focused on the salacious nature of the Jeffrey Epstein case while we prepare to go to war. And of course, in line with one of the other possibilities, and that is the economy, war is always a boon to the economy. Why? Well, because suddenly you have industry that's engaged in the manufacture of all of the weaponry that's necessary. What's another interesting piece about the story that's breaking and taking all of our attention is that now suddenly Congress is focused on Acosta, the Secretary of Labor, because he's the one that approved that plea deal with Jeffrey Epstein in Florida. And so now their focus is no longer on President Trump, but now it's on his Labor Secretary, Acosta. There's so many different angles to the possibilities that it seems almost endless as we go through and consider all of the different pieces of this story. As the story unfolds, Democrats are lining up, and they're not alone. There are some Republicans with them, lining up to demand the Labor Secretary, Alex Acosta, to resign. This tweet from Twitter user Davis Oliver R. says that Deutsche Bank is the one that provided Jeffrey Epstein with these significant financial loans to launch his investment firm. Where have we heard about Deutsche Bank before? Oh, they had dealings with President Trump as well, didn't they? In the tweet, Davis Oliver R. links to an Observer story that says that Epstein borrowed this tainted money from Deutsche Bank, and that this is the reason that he has been able to suddenly become, almost seemingly overnight, this billionaire. It's not because he was that good, but he had access to all of this money. And then we have this young woman just yesterday that came forward and has now had this new accusation against Jeffrey Epstein. Jennifer Arios says that she was recruited outside of her New York City high school in order to provide sexual massages to Jeffrey Epstein, and has accused him of then raping her. That's according to NBC News. Then we have these pictures that have Jeffrey Epstein with all of these different high-profile individuals. We mentioned at the beginning of our time together Donald Trump, President Clinton, Prince Andrew. Why is all this coming out to light now? Well, as I mentioned, I see two possibilities, two possible conclusions. That the story's been developing in secret for years, just simply because of the number of names, high-profile names that are associated with it, and so this case has been building. Or it's a distraction from something else. So which is it? Or could it be something else? Something else entirely? The Hollywood Reporter has an interesting article. And it mentions that Jeffrey Epstein, even though he had been arrested and actually served 13 months because he was convicted then of this plea deal, prostitution and of minors, that yet still Jeffrey Epstein was able to get into high-profile parties, according to the Hollywood Reporter, like Batman vs. Superman premiere. And he went to the Oscar parties as the big high-profile individuals who were falling because of the Me Too movement, somehow Jeffrey Epstein continued to evade that type of limelight. The Hollywood Reporter article says the surprised looks at the party were aimed at Jeffrey Epstein, who was being introduced to guests by New York society doyenne Peggy Segal. When a Warner's executive was asked at the time how a highly recognizable Level 3 registered sex offender landed the hottest ticket in town, the executive offered no comment. How is it that in this time of new awareness of sexual indiscretion, sex assault, of sexual malfeasance, that an individual like Jeffrey Epstein continues to seemingly enjoy the same level of association that he did before? How's that possible? There's a third possible conclusion in the reason that this is attracting so much attention right now. And that is to distract us by keeping us engaged in the salacious details by hiding in plain sight. You see, Jeffrey Epstein's not accused of unwanted advances. He's not being accused of sexual impropriety or sexual assault of adults. He's being accused of having sexual relationships and even forcible sexual contact with minors. Pedophilia. He's now a registered sex offender. And on July the 6th, he was arrested for sex trafficking of minors in New York and Florida. And while all of the focus has been on his association with powerful government officials and powerful lawyers and with high-profile celebrities, the real underlying issue has been ignored. And so could it be it's not because of these high-profile individuals that this case has been being built, and now that's why we're suddenly seeing it, is because of the graphic nature? And could it be that it's not just simply because that we need a distraction from something else that's occurring in the world, even though that's certainly a possibility? But could it be that what we're seeing is a way to distract us from the real event, the real major piece of this whole story? And in order to do that, we're being blinded by the details. You see, he's accused of having sex with kids, with children. An interesting subsequent story is that abortion receives greater support than it has in the previous 2 decades. How does that tie together? Well, there's a third piece, and that is we're continually seeing photographs and video of children in cages at the southern border of the United States. And so here you have this man who's being accused of trafficking in children, of sexual contact with children. There's all this alarm and outrage at the children who are in these cages at the border. But yet, abortion receives the highest level of support in 20 years. How can those things fit together? Could it be that it's really not about the kids? that the concern about the children in cages at the border is more about politics than it is about care of the children. And the fact that Jeffrey Epstien had sexual contact with underage girls, that's really the minor part of the story, the piece they're trying to distract us from. Because you see, if folks really cared about children, truly cared about children, they would be alarmed at the level of support that abortion is receiving. Now, whether you are pro-abortion or anti-abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, whatever title you want to call yourself, if we're truly concerned about children, shouldn't we desire that abortion, regardless of where we fall, would be something that would be used infrequently and not something that would be lauded and applauded? Could it be it's not really about the children, but it's more about politics? And children, as unfortunately is too often the case, are the pawns being used for political advantage. And could it be that the Jeffrey Epstein case is not really about the fact that he had sexual contact with minors, but it's more about trying to get some of the politicians who are associated with him, whether it's Donald Trump or Bill Clinton? Could it be it's not really about the kids? It's about politics. We live in a crazy world, and it's getting crazier. Something for you to think about. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Kahn, and you've been listening to Acceleration Radio.
You have been listening to Acceleration Radio Live, and any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or program content without express written permission from the KGRA-DB or L.A. Marzulli himself is strictly prohibited. The Acceleration Radio Show with L.A. Marzulli, in direct cooperation with the internet website kgraradio.com. To find more on L.A., visit his website at lamarzulli.net.